Hey everyone, it's me, Romi Marks, your Tangled Yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Starlight Zentangle class. I just got done teaching this class for my San Rafael Library students and I decided to make it a video for you to try it at home. I'm so excited to bring this class to you because the composition really lends itself so well in so many different ways. So there's three classes inside of this class. There's the primary class, which is the one in the middle, and then I have these two really fun alternative classes on the side. I'll be sprinkling those throughout the video for you to try. They're really fun and I really hope you try them out. So the things that we are going to need for class today are, you're going to want to have a graphite pencil. You'll want to have your Micron PN pen or your favorite Tangle pen. For accents, I'll be using my Signo Uniball white pen, but you could also use the Sakura white. The gold Sakura pen. And then finally for puddling, I will be using the Faber-Castell brush pen, but you could use an Identa pen or the Micron brush pen, or if you need to use something in a pinch, you can always grab a Sharpie. I will be working on a tile that is 4.5 by 4.5. The tile I'm using today is actually the Genesis tile, and you can pick those up at tangledyogi.com. If you don't have the Genesis tiles, you can try the Apprentice tile, or you can just do a 4.5 by 4.5 square on some really nice cardstock. Before we get started with class, if you like what we did today in the video, please give us a thumbs up or leave us a nice review. Even better, you can subscribe to our YouTube page, and that will make it easier for people to find us. Another thing that I'd love is to see the work that you do. On Facebook, we have a really nice community page called the Tangled Yogi Art Community page, and you can share your work there and see how other students ended up doing the class. We all learn so much from each other, and I would love to see what you create. So, let's get started with the Starlight Zentangle class. Let's go ahead and begin by creating our string here. You can see that I have my graphite pencil in my hand. I'm going to come up to the top of my tile here and come away from the edge about an inch and make a dot. I'm going to go down towards the bottom, and you'll notice that I'll come up about an inch from the bottom and make another dot. So these two are in alignment with each other. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect my dots here, and you can see I've got a little wobble in my line today. I'm going to go ahead and turn my tile and do another line that goes out. And so now you can see that I've got a string that looks like an L on the outside shape here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to follow this line right here and just let it go straight down. And then I'm going to go out to the side and let it go straight out. So now I have a little square in this corner. Once I have that, I'm going to come out about an inch, make a dot, and divide. Come out about an inch, make a dot, and divide. So now I have 3 squares here and 1 square there. So it's a line of squares. I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to come out about an inch, make a dot, divide the space, come out about an inch, make a dot, and divide the space. And you can see my squares aren't perfect. They're, this side looks a little bit wider than this side, but it's really no big deal because we're really going to have a really nice tangle to go in there. If you want to make it perfect, you can, but I like things that look like they're handmade. So once you have that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create an aura on the inside of the piece, and it's going to just go right down a nice fine aura. And then I'm going to go again and make another fine aura. An aura is just a line that echoes the line that's in front of it. So we have this really nice string right here, and then we've got this really nice space in which we're going to work with. So go ahead, take a minute to finish up yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to ink this in and start tangling. Let's start to ink this in. I've got my micron pen in my hand here, and I'm just going to start to ink in the line of our string here, and you can see that I'm taking my time, turning the tile, I'm going to come in and start to let the line drop down and let this line move over. I'm going to come to where my little division lines are. And this is a great time to clean up anything that didn't work out for you when you were starting with your string. And then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and do the aura line. So you can see now I've got that really pretty string in here where we've got all these areas to work in and this really nice space. So go ahead and ink yours in, and when we come back we're going to talk about what a fragment is. So you can see we have our string here with all of these really nice boxes. I'm just going to grab a little piece of scratch paper here and talk about what we're about to do. So you can see I have my square here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the square and I'm going to make a bay leaf shape. I'm going to go inside of the bay leaf shape and I'm going to do an aura that's nice and tight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from the corner and I'm going to pause before I get to my shape, and I'm going to go and make a triangle or what looks like a Y. I'll come up from the bottom and make another Y shape. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to puddle in that Y shape. And what that does is gives this a little bit of pop and a little bit of interest. Now once I have that, you can see that this is pretty easy to do. Now I'm going to build off of this. Here's another square. And I'm going to flop it the opposite direction. So you can see now my bay leaf is going the opposite direction. I'm going to go ahead and aura it. This one's a little narrow on the inside, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm going to create that Y shape that comes up from the bottom and a Y shape that comes down from the top. Go ahead and puddle. And you can see we get this really cool tangle that it starts to move around, which is really neat. Now if this one was a little bit more aligned with that, it would be a little bit more interesting to the eye, but because it's going downward, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by turning our piece over here. So I'm just going to take this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating my bay leaf shapes. So I'm going to start by coming from the top, and you'll notice that I'm coming towards the center of the piece. The bay leaf is going to face in towards that square. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flop it outwards, so you're going to see me start to go the opposite direction. I'll bring it in. And then I'm going to bring it out. So you can see in this corner right here, I'm bringing it out. I'm going to go again over here. So now I've got this one going this way. I'm going to go the opposite direction. And then I'm going to go the opposite direction again. And I'll do it again. So once I have that, now I can start to do my Ys. So I'm going to come back in, coming up from the corner, make a Y and let it touch. Come down from the corner, make a Y, let it touch. Now I'll go to the next one. Coming down, make a Y, coming up, and make a Y. So you can see I'm just moving from side to side. Super fun, super easy. Coming up from the corner. So you can see I'm going to move over here now. Coming down from the corner, make your Y. Up from the corner, make your Y. And it's just that one singular shape that we're making, but when you bring them all together, it creates this beautiful pattern. Look at how pretty that is. Isn't that really elegant? There's something very Art Deco about that. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to do that internal aura. And you can see that I'm just taking my time with it. Let yourself breathe and relax, enjoy what you're doing. Enjoying this one-pointed awareness meditation of just moving back and forth and getting into your Zen. Once I've had a chance to aura, I'm going to go ahead and puddle. So I'm just going to come in and puddle ink into those little Y shapes that I have in here. So I'm going to puddle in mine, you go ahead and do yours, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more. So you can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around and do my puddling in, but I really want to talk to you about is throwing in different fragments into different pieces. So I thought I would show you a couple that I did just on the break here. So what I have here is another one that's really, really fun, and I love the geometric patterns that we got coming around the bend, and I'll show you what this one is. So this one is, I'm just going to go ahead and show in the square here. So all I did with this one was I did a curved line with a couple of auras, and then I did the tangle flux, and flux came up and touched the edges of the border here, so you can see that I've got that going on. Now when I grew this one, I'm just going to add another square into it. I took it going the opposite direction. So you're going to see me come in and do my auras going in the opposite direction. And you can see that I'm meeting them up with each other. See how those met up? And then I'll flip it so that I can do the flux. So I'll just come in and do one flux. Here comes the other one. And here comes the third. And look at that beautiful pattern that it starts to make. So it's just one square that I'm flipping backwards and forwards, which is kind of fun. Now, I did do one that I left just going straight, and this one's really fun. I love this pattern. This pattern really just spoke to me. It had like a mid-century modern kind of feel to it. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo of how this one works. So I'm going to flip this over. And all I'm going to do is make my square just like I did before. So these are all fragments here that we're putting inside of the square. So all this one is an X. And then once I have that, I do a little bit of a plus sign in the center of the X. And then I come down from the corners and I meet up with the plus sign. So it's just really, really simple stuff. It looks more complicated than it actually is. And what I loved about this one was that it created this beautiful, what we call in Zentangle, a meta pattern. And meta patterns are really wonderful because they give a lot of interest to a piece and they look more complicated than they actually are. So you can see I didn't do anything different. I'm just doing the same tangle over and over again. I'm not flipping it back and forth. I'm just keeping it straight on. And look at how we got this really interesting diamond on the inside. So if I kept going with that, when I pull this one back, let me see where it went. It creates what looks like a really complicated pattern, but really isn't. It's a lot of fun. So you could change it up and do different ones, or you could stick with the one that we're going to be doing for this particular class. So go ahead, have some fun with it, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work on what's going to go into the center. So let's go ahead and start to put our star into the space here. I'm going to go ahead and divide here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide the space again. So we're going to do a tangle that's called Quasihuggins, and it was actually created by one of my favorite tanglers. She goes by Zentangle. And so you can see that I've got this really nice division. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dot up at the top, and I'm going to make a dot at the bottom, and you can see that I've got about 1/4 of an inch away from the border here. Now on the sides of this particular piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come towards the middle of each square, and then I'm going to go out until I get about 1/4 of an inch away from the border, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So you can see I'm right here going out about 1/4 of an inch away. Come to the middle of the square, go about 1/4 of an inch away from the border and make a dot, and I'm going to do another one right here. So now I have my setup for it. In the center, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a circle, and then I'm going to aura the circle. Now I'm going to come out to these little dots right out here, and you can see that I'm using my pencil. I'm still just building my string here. And my circles, I would say, are the size of, I would say, a pea. Now, once I have that, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit more so that you can see it. I'm going to grab my micron. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to ink in my circles. Taking my time with it. You can see my circles aren't perfect. They don't have to be. Now, once I have those circles drawn in, I'm going to start to connect those circles to the inner circle. So I'm just going to come in here and do my outline. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my internal aura. And I'm just making it a little bit more pronounced there. Once I have that, I want you to think of the letter G in cursive. So, a lot of the time when we're looking at the letter G, it looks a little something like this, right? Just without going through. So it's just the letter G without going through. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come off the back side of this circle, and watch, all I'm doing is connecting to the back side of that circle. I'm going to come to the next one and do the same. Next one and do the same. Next one and do the same. Continuing. And here comes the last one. Now, once I have that, I'm going to take a moment to pause and make sure that I've connected all of my circles together. I'm going to go and work with this particular circle that I have right here. But I need to use this line in order to get to that circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up about 1/4 of an inch out from the circle here, and watch, I'm just going to make a little arc that kind of looks like I'm completing the G, right? And then I'm going to come in and make a circle. So I want you to think of that you're completing your G off of the last one. So here I am, I'm going to work with this circle, but I'm coming off the back side of this G. So I'm going to come up and then make my circle. Going to the next one, this is the G that I'm going to work with. So I'm all done here. This is the G. Coming off the back side of this one and completing my G. Now notice that my circles are right underneath each other. Coming to the next one, almost like I'm just completing the G. And then I'll do it right in here. So here's my G right here, coming up off the back side. And then here's the last one. Here's the G, coming off the back side of the last one and completing. So you can see we've got these two flower-like shapes going in opposite directions, which is really cool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete the circle or complete the petal. So here I am up at the top. All I'm going to do is go from the inside of this G down to this G, so it looks a little something like this. I'm going to turn my tile clockwise here. Here's my G. I'm just going to come down and connect. Coming to this one right here, coming down, connect. Coming down, connect. Coming down, connect. One more right here, coming down and connect. Isn't that so pretty? What a fun tangle that is. I just love it. So go ahead and finish yours up, and we're going to add a little bit more to this in a minute. So we're going to work inside of the petals here just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by doing first an aura around each of these petals. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come right underneath the circle here, and I'm going to work my way all the way around. Once I have that, I'm going to drop into this V, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop into here. So you can see it's an aura, drop into the V, and then drop right over there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn clockwise here, come to the next one, go around the top circle, drop into the V, and then go around. Going to the next one, go around the circle, drop down into the V, and then around and connect. Turning, going around, drop down into the V, and over. Last one right here. Drop down into the V and connect. Oop, we got one more left. Into the V and over. So that's giving it even more interest to the piece. Now I'm going to come into the petal here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and make a triangle inside. So I'm just going to go up and then over. I'm going to go again, up, over, and last one right here. I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go up and then over, and I'm always turning my tile, and it's usually in a clockwise fashion. Going again. One more time. And last one right here. And that creates a beautiful star on the inside of this beautiful tangle. Now, what I love about this particular star is that we can turn those triangles into a tangle called zonked, which is one of my favorites, and most of you have seen me do it, but I'm going to do it again because I just love this tangle so much. So all I'm going to do is go to the tip of each triangle and do a little puddling right in here. And just doing that little bit really makes a huge difference. So I'm going to turn my tile clockwise, go into the triangles, and do a little puddling. And I find this to be very meditative and relaxing. So just take your time with it. Breathe. Soften in your shoulders. I always find it to be so amazing how just that little bit of putting weight on something can make it so interesting. Isn't that so cool? I just love that. So go ahead and finish yours up, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little ribbon to this. So to add a little bit more interest to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for these little valleys. You can see that this little valley is right by the little petal that's coming off of here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make an arc coming off of the back end of this, and then I'm going to do another arc coming up off of the top. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to aura very tightly, and I'll aura very tightly. I'm going to go to the next one and I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to go to the valley and do an arc, and then another arc, and then I'll do a tight aura, and then a tight aura. Coming to the next valley, slight arc, nice arc, tight aura, and a tight aura. You can see that I'm just moving outward from each piece. Take your time. And right in here. And And so you can see that that gives a little bit more movement to the piece as we work our way around. Take your time, finish those up, and we're going to add a little bit of tipple when we come back. Now, you know me, I do love to add tipple to my pieces. It gives it a very festive feel, but I don't want my tipple to really be competing with the other orbs that are in here. So these tipple are going to be considerably smaller. And what I mean by that is I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to work in the spaces around my ribbon. So it's going to be much smaller tipple, and I'm going to do them in clusters like caviar, or some of you might know this as Bronx cheer. And I'm just going to go on either side of the ribbon, and I can come up in here and add some. But I'm really being mindful to not let these tipple compete with what's going on inside. And when I say compete, we don't want them to be the same size, because it'll take your eye away from what's going on in there. So you can see that I'm just going through. Remember to breathe. And then finally coming all the way around. And you can see that that really brings a festive feel into the piece here. Go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the other pieces. One of the things that I like to do is I like to come back to a piece and try it many, many different ways. And I'm especially happy with this composition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and I'm going to do a demo for another thing that you could put into your space here. There's actually a few different things I'm going to demo for you so that you can try it out. But one of my favorite tangles is Biscuits, and Biscuits has a Starlight quality to it as well. So you can see that I've divided the page here in the middle of my square, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a square inside that area. And you can see I'm still using my pencil, just trying to get that square the way that I want it. Once I have that square the way that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink it in. I'll go ahead and do an aura around my square. And then we're going to do Biscuits. So Biscuits is, we're going to come off of the top of this this particular corner a couple of times. So watch what's going to happen. I'm going to come up from the bottom and go almost to the edge and stop. I'm turning my tile clockwise, and I'm going to do it again. Come up through the top, go out to the edge, and stop. Come up from the bottom, out to the edge, and stop. And last one right here. So I'm just going to come in right on that line and stop. So now we've got this beautiful, almost star-like shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to dive back into the center. I'm going to step down, and I'm going to dive back into the center. step down, and dive back into the center. I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to do it again. Stepping out and diving back in. Out, dive back in, out, and dive back in. Going to the next one. Out, back to the center, stepping down, back to the center, and one more time. So you can see that that's got a really nice feel to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work with the other side just a little bit. So I'm going to come in on this side, I'm going to step down, go back to the center, step down, back to the center, step down, and then I'm going to just go ahead and connect. So I'm going to go to the next one and do the same. Stepping down, back to the center, stepping down, back to the center, stepping down, and connect. Coming to the next one. So you can see, look at how fun that is, just having something different for your composition if you want to play. And if you want to add Tipple to this one, you can go ahead and add Tipple to this one as well. I can't help myself. Let's do one for this one as well, and then that way we'll have 3 stars for you to work with. So I'm going to come back in to this square here. And you can see that I've been working on all the different ones that I did for you guys, right? So here I am dividing the space, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a diagonal divide as well. Now, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a circle in the middle. And then I'll do another circle around it. And we're going to do one of my favorite tangles. This is Star-ing. So I'm going to pick up my micron pen and I'm going to ink in my circle. And then I'm going to come up about, I'd say about 1/4 of an inch below where the division lines are, so my guidelines. So you're going to see me come out. Now that's just going to be for the verticals, right? Not for the diagonals. For the diagonals, I'm going to ask them to kind of line up with what we have on my verticals. So you can already see that it's starting to look like a star just by having that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from here to here and just keep a nice straight line. So it's just going to be like that. And you can see that that has a really nice feel to it with Star-ing. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to build inside of this piece here. So we've got these really beautiful triangles, and one of the things that I love to do inside of a triangle as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a circle in the center, and I'm going to make the number 6. You can see there's the number 6 right there. I'm going to turn my tile clockwise here, and I'm going to try to make another 6 right there. And then finally I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make another one, so that it gives us this beautiful tangle on the inside. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to go ahead and do the little circle on the inside, make the number 6. Can you see how that's there? Here it comes again, and here it comes again. We'll do it one more time together. Coming from the outside in, and the outside in. Super fun, and it's a beautiful tangle to do. Once again, mimicking that idea that it's really complex, but it's not. Go ahead and finish up your petals. I'll finish up mine. So you can see that there's a multitude of ways of doing this class. Here's the one that we did at the library. Here's a couple more for you to play with. So we're going to go ahead and talk about color here in a minute, but I just want you to see that there's so much that you can do with these pieces. So we're going to start working with the piece here, and we're going to be coloring in our fragments that we have. And I'm going to start just with the outside pieces just to give this some interest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my fragment that I have right here, and I have a light blue and a dark blue that I'm going to be using. So I have PC992 here. This is the light aqua. Many of you know that I really do favor this color. It's a great color to work with. And then I also have in my hand the ultramarine blue, which is the PC902. This is also a great color, blue. If you don't have this blue, you can use the denim blue or the Copenhagen blue. Both of those will do. So you can see that my color pencil is all sharpened up, and I'm going to be holding my pencil like this. Traditionally we hold our pencil like this, but for this particular piece I'm going to be holding it with my index finger and my thumb and using my other fingers to stabilize it. I'm going to go around that little pod that I have in the center here, that little bay leaf, and you can see that I'm going very, very lightly in small circular motions with that blue. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in those areas there. Now, when I get to the areas where the two lines are on either side, I'm going to change the way that I hold my pencil, and I'm just going to do it traditionally and add a little bit of heavier pressure to that pencil. You can see already that that turquoise is getting a little bit darker. You can see that the pencil is moving in a circular-like motion, and I'm going to about the halfway point here. I'll do the same thing on the other side. So it's just a little bit of pressure. Just like so. And you can see that that's already added so much dimension to the piece here. Finally, I'll come back in with a little bit of that darker blue, and you can see that I'm hardly touching the page with it because that darker blue has a lot of pigmentation to it. I'm just adding a dusting of that darker blue. Just like so. Once I've had a chance to do that, I'm going to blur my lines a little bit by coming back with that light aqua and softening it out. And that's how we're going to be handling these squares. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and in a minute I'm going to show some of the other options for the other class that I'm teaching here. So we were talking about the Biscuits one, and then we were talking about the one that has star-ing in it. So you can see that I've had a chance to go around and add a little bit to my piece here. Just for kicks here, I'm going to take this off to the side, and I'm going to bring in one of the other tangles that we were working on. I'm going to work just in this corner right up in here, and just because I have the blue in my hand, I'm going to keep working with it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and very softly start to bring blue into the star that I have. I'm working on the side of the pencil, so it doesn't take a whole lot of time to fill up that star. Once I have that, I'm going to add a little bit of dimension to this by doing some more shading. So I'm going to go ahead and hold my pencil traditionally here, and I'm going to start to bring a shadow coming from the center outward. You can see that the pencil is working in a circular-like motion, and I'm keeping the tip nice and bright. Coming out from the center and coming out from the center. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my darker blue now, and I'm going to start to bring a little bit more intensity right around that line. Doing the same thing on the other side. And the same thing on the other side. And you can see that that brings a lot of drama into the piece. I'm going to go back in and do some blending with it to blur out my edges. And this is really going to make for a really beautiful piece. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add a new color into the piece. You can see I'm just kind of softening out my edges here. And look at how pretty that's going to be. All right, go ahead and do yours. I'll do mine. And finally, if you're working on the one with Biscuits in it, I'm going to come right up into this one right in here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to shade into the corner here using that same blue that we were using in the others. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more intensity into the corners here. You'll see me come over into this corner as well. And then I'll come in with a little bit of that light blue, or rather the darker blue, and add a little darkness into the tip and into the tip. I'll come in and blur out my edges with that lighter blue. And that's how you're going to handle that part of it. So if you're doing this one, go ahead and do your shading. And remember, you can always change up the colors, just use the same technique. All right, enjoy. So I'm going to come back to the original piece that we were working on here, and I'm going to start to bring in a new color into the piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in two different greens. I have a really nice true green, which is PC910, and then I also have in my hand peacock green, which is PC907. So what I'm really looking for is kind of a minty green and a dark green. So you could use grass green if you don't have the peacock green, or you could use the dark green, or there's a couple of other ones that I think it's called marine green too, that's also really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with that green, and I'm going to start to fill in the leaf. Notice the way that I'm holding the pencil. I'm still using the side of the pencil here, And I'm going to go ahead and give some heavier pressure into one side of the petal and then the other. Then once I have that, I'm going to pick up the darker green and dust the edge. And I'll dust the edge down here as well. I'm going to come back in and blur by just coming in with that lighter green again. And look at how pretty that is. It really has a nice luminous feel to it. Go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine. Okay. So I've had a chance to go around my piece and finish that up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to add in a third set of colors into the piece. So I've got in my hand the lavender PC934, and then I also have violet in my hand, which is PC932. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a sheen to this leaf. And I'm going to come to the outside aura and add a little bit of that lavender. And then I'll go ahead and I will add a little bit of that violet right into the tip. And right into the tip. And then I'll start to blur out my edges by just bringing back in a little bit of that lavender and mushing the two together. I know that's a real technical term, mushing, but there it is. So that's really going to give this a nice feel to it. So go ahead and do yours. Now, if you're working on some of the other pieces that we have in the class, so let's just say you're working with these really cool stars that we have, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work inside of this box right here. So let me just zoom in on that box. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add purple, or the lavender, all the way around it. And then once I've had a chance to bring that lavender in all the way around it, I'm going to add a little bit of that violet just to give it a pop. So I'm going to come in right into the tip here, and I'm going to start to shade around the outside edge of the star. You're going to see me go all the way around. Adding that shading. And then once I've had a chance to get that shading in, I'm going to come back in with some of that lavender. Sorry if I fell off the page for a minute. So I'm just blurring out my edges with that lavender. And you can see that that really gets quite the glow. Really pretty. Now, if you're working on the one that happens to have the flecks in it, I'm going to come into flecks with the lavender. And then I'll come back in with some of the violet. Right in at the base. A little bit heavier at the base. And then I'll go ahead and I'll blur out my edges once again. What I love about working with color pencils is that you have so much control over what you can do. Sometimes with watercolor, it's just not in your control, and I love that you can make it as dark or as light as you want it to be. You can come back again and again, and I think that's why I love Prismas so much, is because they give me that ability to do whatever I want. So that when I zoom out, look at how electric that's going to be. That's going to be so pretty. I already love the way that this is starting to come out. All right, you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine. All right, so let's continue on here. I'm going to pick back up my greens that I was working with earlier, and I'm going to start to shade in the star that's in the center here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and shade in through those triangles here. And I'm going pretty lightly. And then once I have that, I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow to the bottom of the triangle set. So I'm pressing a little bit harder here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a little bit of that dark green right along the black line that's at the bottom of that triangle set. I'm going to come back in with the light green and blur out my edges a little bit. And that's how we're going to handle those triangles. So go ahead and do yours, I'll do mine, and then when we meet up, I'll give some options for some of the other compositions we're working on. So this is really coming along nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick back up my purples here. I've got my lavender and my violet here, and I'm going to go around the piece that I have right here. So right in here, right around the triangle, I'm going to go with the violet. And then I'm going to dip back down a little bit. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And then once I've had a chance to get in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of shading into the tip right up in here. And you can see I have the violet in my hand. I'm also going to come over here into this area and into this area right here. Now I'm going to come in and blur out the edges with that lavender once again, going very, very lightly with the lavender, just tickling the page, just ever so softly. And the same over here. So you're going to go around each one of these triangles and do just that. Now, if you're working on one of the other compositions, I'm going to bring in this one right here that we've been working on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same lavender and I'm going to start to bring it into the petals that I have here. So I'm going to just lay this down on its side. You can see the pencil is on the side, and I'm using the side of the pencil as I move it around into the shape. Now once I have that, I'm going to add a little bit of shading behind each of these lines. So you can see that I'm going to go behind this line first, and I'm using the lavender, or rather the violet, sorry. I'll go to the next one and go above. And then the next one and go behind. And then I'll soften out my edge just with a little bit of that lavender. And so I'll go all the way around and do that with each of these. All right, enjoy and have fun. So you can see I've had a chance to go all the way around and do the color on this. And then I got a little bit ahead of myself and started tangling. And so I thought I'd share with you the tangle that I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the valley here in our star. So you can see here's a little valley that's right in here for those of you who are doing this composition. And what I did was I used the tangle fescue, and fescue is just a line with a teardrop on the edge of it. So it's just coming out at an arc, making a little teardrop. Then you're going to do another one where the teardrop is going in the same direction. And then you'll do one on the back side of it where the teardrop is going in the opposite direction. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to do an aura all the way around the 3 fescues and come back to center, so that when I zoom out you can see that it really gives a nice feeling of movement around the piece. So for those of you who are doing this composition, all you're doing is a curved line coming out with a teardrop on the end of it, another one coming off the bottom, and then one moving in the opposite direction. And I went into each of the valleys that I had and added this tangle in there. So go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back we're going to start working with the original piece again. So before we go back to the original composition that we were working with, for those of you who are working with Biscuits, this is that really fun tangle that I showed you guys earlier on in the video. You can see that I've started to do some shading with it, and I thought I would take you through the shading that I've done. So I'm going to come into this petal right in here, and you can see that I have my 2 greens in my hand here. And I'm just going to go through and shade just like what we've been doing with the side of the pencil, going all the way through the petal. And this is the place to let your inner 4-year-old out. We're going to go over our lines a little bit, which is always fun. I loved watching my nieces when they would color with great abandon. They would go right over the lines in their coloring books and not have a care in the world. And that is something I always try to emulate. So now that I've got that nice shading of the light green down, I've picked up my darker green, and I'm going to do a shade right where these little step downs are. You can see that what I'm doing is I'm creating a shadow of this particular piece right above here. So I'm working in a circular motion with that pencil, and I'll just go to each one where there would be a shadow and just put it in right along the black line, and you can see that I'm coming in over here and doing the same thing on each step down. Now once I've had a chance to do that with each step down, I'm going to come back in with the green, the light green that we started with, and I'm going to blur out the edge. So you can see that I'm coming in and I'm starting to blur out the edge to get a really nice feel of that shadow. I'm using a light to medium tension on that pencil and just getting a soft blur out there. Now I'll come back to this middle one right here and just add a dusting of that light green right at the bottom with medium pressure, just to give it a feeling of having its own movement. So you can see that when I zoom out, that really brings a lot of dimension to Biscuits. Okay, so I've come back to our original tangle that we started working on here, and I'm going to pick up my blues again. So I've got my light blue and my dark blue in my hand here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this petal right here. So you can see that I'm going to be working right in here, and I've got my light blue in my hand, and I'm just going to very softly start to shade in around that petal. So we're working inside of the aura here, and once you get inside of your aura, we're going to add some deeper shading to the piece. So you can see that I'm starting to work my way around, and the reason why I've picked up the blue is because I want it to have something to bounce the eye off of, so that you're going from the outside to the inside. So I've got that blue in there nice and light. I'm going to pick up the darker blue. I'm going to dust into this valley right in here, And I'm going to dust into the area where this part of the petal is overlapping. And I'll do it over here as well. Once I have that, I'll add a little bit of a deeper touch. And then I'll come in and I'll blur out my edges. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So you go ahead and do yours, I'm going to go ahead and do mine, and then when we come back, we'll add a little bit more into our ribbons. So I am really loving the way that this is turning out. What a fun piece this is. So we are going to pick back up our purples here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the ribbons that we have, and what this is going to look like is I'm going to dust the ribbon with the lavender first, but you'll notice that I'm going to leave a light space right in the middle of the ribbon. So you can see that there's that light space right in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press a little bit harder with that lavender and just give it a little bit of a pressure and a little bit of a shadow. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that violet that I have here, and I'm going to give a little dust right along the black line. Once I've got that shadow in there, I'll come back in with the lavender and blur out the edge. And what it does is it makes it look like there's this continuation that happens from the petal all the way out to the ribbon, so you can see that this almost looks like a continuation outward, which is really cool. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we'll start to add a little bit into our tipple. So we're going to start to work with tipple here. And tipple is the circles that we have on the inside here, and also these little circles on the outside. And I'm going to give a demonstration of what I did in my tipples out here with this particular petal that we have. So I'm going to come in with my gray pencil. This is the PC1065, and I love this pencil because it doesn't smear or smudge, but you could use graphite if you want to use graphite. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to very, very lightly shade one side of the tipple here. And then I'll come back in with a medium tension and give a little bit of pressure to that pencil to give a little bit of a shadow. I'll do the same thing down here, light and then medium. And then I'm going to come into my little tipples on the side, and because they're so small, all I'm going to do is just shade one little side of them with a medium pressure. And you can see that I'll come over here and do the same. And you can see that that brings a really nice dimension into the piece, so that when I zoom out, look at those beautiful tipple. They have that really nice shading going on. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. We'll go all the way around, do the little ones too. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the other compositions that we have and start to finish out the background. So you can see that I've started to work on the background of the piece here. I've got this really beautiful green that has surrounded the background. So let's talk about that and how to do that. So I've got the two greens in my hand here that we've been using, and I'm just going to come in and very lightly start to shade behind our petals here. You can see I'm going down below and around, and I'm using the side of the pencil once again so that I get a nice smooth dusting of color here. Now once I've got that all shaded in and filled in, I'm going to come back with the darker green, and you can see that I'm right next to the ribbon here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just doing a very soft dusting of that green right next to the ribbon, and I'll go next to this one as well. Now, once I've got a dusting of that green down, I'm going to come back in with some of that lighter green, and I'm going to blur out the edges with a medium tension. So you can see that I've just gone in and given that a little bit of a push, and then I'll come over here and do the same. You can see that my pencil's working in a circular-like motion to really give a nice distribution of color here. So that when I zoom out now, you can see that's all I've done all the way around, is I just did that dusting of light green all the way behind each petal, and then I came in around each of the ribbons and did a shadow. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the other compositions and also finish the center. So to finish the center here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my light blue and my dark blue, and I'm going to start to add some shading right here into the center. Now I'm going to come in with the light blue first and just give that a little dusting. You can see that I'm leaving a little bit of a light source there. I'm going to come back a little bit with that same blue and give it a heavier pressure. Just around the edge here. And then I'm going to come back in with a little bit of the dark blue and just run it right along the edge. I'll go ahead and blur out my edges with that nice light blue. Now, just for a little bit of interest, what I want to do is I want to come back in with some of that lavender and just do a soft little band of lavender coming across. Just to keep it interesting. And then I'll come back in with some of that darker blue and just blend it in. Or rather, it's the aqua that I've come back with. Sorry about that. So you can see that that brings a really nice interest into the piece in the center. It kind of gives it the cherry on top. Now I have to say I've been having a lot of fun with this next composition. You can see that I've added some black into the background and I've shaded in my tipples. And I'm going to show you exactly what I did so that you can see it for yourself and feel comfortable with it. You're going to need to have a puddle pen. Now those of you who have been with me before, you know that I love the Faber-Castell brush pen, but if you have the Identa pen or the Micron brush pen, what we're looking for is a pen that has a larger nib so that you can do the background without having to have a lot of effort with your Micron. So you can see that I'm taking my brush pen and I'm just going to start to work around that really pretty leaf-like shape that we had put in here. And I'm going to go ahead and just clean this up and start to work in here. Now once I have this and it's all finished up with the black, I can go in with my color pencil and start to work on the tipple. But you can see why having a nice brush pen handy really works out to create that background in a very efficient way. So you're going to see me just kind of dip in here. I'm working with the tip of the pen. If you feel a little nervous to work with the tip of a brush pen in here, you can always go back to using your Micron. I can even come back in here and start to add some of that in as well. So once I have that done, I'm going to come back in with my blue pencil here. And I'm going to shade just like we did with our gray on the other one. So I'll come in very softly with the blue, the light blue, and get right in on these. And then once I have that nice soft blue in there, I'm going to pick up my darker blue and give that a little bit of intensity on the side. And you can see all the way around I've been leaving that light source on the left hand side there. And then I'm going to come back in with my light blue and blur it out a little bit. Just give it a softening so that it really has a very kind of drop-like shape, or a droplet kind of shape. Now I've also gone in with my black pen and added a dot inside each of our stars here, just kind of giving it a little bit of a pop. And then inside of my diamonds, I gave 3 dots just to give it a little bit more of a graphic nature. And then finally, I think I'm going to come in with my gray and just add a really pretty marcasite type stone in the center here, just to give this a little bit of interest. You can see I'm shading it just the same way that I did on the other demos. Just giving it a little bit of a pop, and you can do anything you want in here. You could really get colorful if you like. And then I also came in and added a little bit of darkness inside of our wells. So you can see that I went in with my pen and added a little bit of darkness with the wells. And I really do think that that gives it a really cool pop, so that when I come back out, look how beautiful that tile is. Isn't that fun? That's only 2 colors, and it just really gives it so much dimension, and that black just really pops off of it, don't you think? All right, so you go ahead and finish up yours if you're working on this composition, and then we'll come back with Biscuits as our last piece. So you know I couldn't leave this one alone, right? I'm having too much fun with it. I added a little bit of gold into the piece as well. So I have my gold Sakura jelly roll in my hand here. And so I went into the border and added some gold in here. And then I also added it around the stone. And then I popped it into my fescue as well. So look at how cool that is. When I move it around, you can really see the shimmer that it brings into the piece. Super duper fun. I'm really enjoying this one. But I have been playing. I know. So let's come back to Biscuits for a minute. So a lot's been going on with this tile, and I want to give you some demos so that you can finish your Biscuits too. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start to add some gemstones to our Biscuits. So I'm going to turn Biscuits so that I can really see it, and you can see that I'm going to work on the right hand side, or rather the left hand side of my Biscuits here. And what this is going to look like is I'm going to come right here where it's stepping down, and I'm going to go ahead and add an arc off of the step down. So you're going to see me come in, it's like a squarish arc, and then I'm going to add a rounded off arc, and then I'll go ahead and add another arc right behind it, so they kind of look like layered gemstones. Inside of the gemstone, what I'm going to do, or rather in the border of it, I'm adding these little dots every other one, just to kind of give it a little bit of interest in there. It almost looks like, oh God, what is it called? Zippity doodah. Doodah. It's doodah. So it almost looks like doodah, which is a Zentangle tangle for those of you who are not in the know. So I'm just going through and adding those on either side. And hopefully it's showing up on the screen because it's so small. Now, once I've gotten in the doodah, I'm going to go ahead and do some shading. And the shading is pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just going to come in with that lavender and start in with the lavender nice and soft, leaving a nice light source there. Then I'll come in with a little bit of the violet, and then I'm going to blur out my edges just a little bit with that lavender again. I'm going to reintroduce the blue, so the blue is going to come in the background here. I'll do a dusting of that darker blue. I'll blur that out. And then I'm going to introduce a new color set into the piece. Now I had introduced gray in one of these, and then I'm going to bring in the neutral for this one. So I've got three really nice colors here. I've got a really nice yellow orange, I've got my mineral orange, and I've got my Tuscan red. So what I have here, it is the yellowed orange, which is PC 1007. 1002, and then mineral orange, which is PC 1033, and then you know me, I love that Tuscan red, PC 937. This is a great trifecta of color to have. So I'm going to start with that yellowed orange, but you could also use the Spanish orange if you don't have the yellow orange. A little bit of that mineral orange, and then a little bit of that Tuscan red for pop. And then I'll come back in and I'll blur it all out with a little bit of that yellowed orange. So you go ahead and do your gemstones. I'm going to zoom out just so that you can see. Now what I've done is I've popped them in on the left side of each of my large petals. Okay, and then I put them in the corners as well. Okay, so it's all the same, just putting in your gemstones just like so. When we come back, I'm going to do a demonstration of the border around the outside edge, but this is a good place to pause me. Okay, so you can see that I'm going to start to work in that corner for the last set of gemstones. So all it is just coming up from the corner with a nice kind of rectangular feel, and then rounding off on the sides, and then adding doodah, a kind of doodah dot kind of situation going on here. And right over here as well. So once you have that, you can go in and do your shading like you did before, where we start with the purple. And then we'll shade in with the violet. And then finally I'm going to come in with the blues on each side here. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do one on one side and then the other color on the other side. So I will be doing a little bit of that yellowed orange, and I will also be putting in some of the mineral orange, and then finally a little dusting of that Tuscan red. So once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish out that background. So the background goes a little something like this. Coming in with that nice yellowed orange, you can see that I'm working on the side of that pencil, and I'm dusting all the way around the biscuits and the gems. You can see I'm working on the side of that pencil, little circles. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that mineral orange, and I'm going to bring that mineral orange and dust it around the gemstones. And I can see that I didn't do the doodah all the way down that one side. I see it. Don't think I don't. And then I'm going to do a little bit of dusting around the side of my biscuits here. So I'm looking for, when I do the side of my biscuits, you can see that I've shaded down the right hand side of each of these big petals. So I'm going to come down the right hand side of the petal, and I'm going to go a little bit up around the gemstone here. Now once I've got that, I'm going to grab for some of that Tuscan red. You know me. I love, love, love this color. Can you tell? So once I have that, I'm just dusting around over the mineral orange just a little bit. The combination of the mineral orange with the Tuscan red is one of my favorites. If you don't have Tuscan red, I highly recommend going and grabbing it. You can probably order it through Blix, or you can order it through let's see here. I think Blix, and I think probably Jerry's Artorama sells them singularly too if you don't have that color in your set. So that you can see that when I come back around, look at how beautiful that shading is in here. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of movement. So take your time and really enjoy working with that background, because it really has a nice earthy feel to it, so that when I zoom out, look at how pretty that is. Now when we come back, I'm just going to add a little dusting of the background on the outside edge so you can see what I did. So you can see that I started to dust in the background with that yellowed orange. Over here you can see the shading that I did, and I'm going to do a demonstration of that shading right now. So the yellowed orange is in the background behind our flux here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my piece on its side, and now I'm going to come in after I've put in the yellowed orange, and I'm going to bring in the mineral orange in here, and I'm going to go into the well of our piece, or the valley, and then I'm going to go up towards the peak. So I'm going to go up towards the peak and then back down into the valley again. Once I have that, I'm going to go all the way through, and you know that I'm going to grab for that Tuscan red. So here I go, I'm grabbing for the Tuscan red and bringing that into the bottom of the valley, and I'm just going to let it stay nice and close to the black line. And then I'll come in and I'll blur it out with my yellowed orange just to give it a little bit of drama. So that you can see it starts to bring in a really beautiful electricity out into that border. Isn't that so fun? It's amazing what browns can do. Just to reiterate, these are some of my favorite colors to put next to really vibrant electric colors. So I can't say enough about that trifecta of the orange yellow and the mineral orange and the Tuscan red. Okay, so go ahead and play, have fun, and then when we come back, we are going to finish up. Alright, so you know me, I do love the white pen. I'm using my Signo white Uniball pen for this part here, and we're going to zoom in on our gemstones here just for a minute. I'm going to come into the centerpiece here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of white coming in on the side, and a little dot. And then I'll come in onto the gemstones over here. You can see I'm going to go down the purple here, add a little bit of lightness here. Cranky Pants pen today. And then I'll come in right in here and add a dot, and a little bit in here, and maybe add a dot right in here. So you're going to see me just kind of work my way around and get right in there. And you can do these on your own as you wish to just give these a little bit of interest, and even go out into the borders over here. So take a moment to do some white, and when we come back, I'll show you some white on some of the other ones as well. So I'm back to the original piece that we started on, and I'm just going to add a little bit of white into the center here, a nice curve, and then a little bit of a dot motif going on in there. And then finally I'm going to come around to these tipple that I have and just add a little white dot into where the darkest gray is, and that way it'll really pop forward and give it some translucency. You can see that I'm just kind of working my way around the piece and getting a little bit of that little pop in there. It just gives it a little bit of interest. And then I could even come into our piece that we have over here and add a little bit of the white dot into where those blue tipple are, just by giving it a little bit of interest. Goes a long way in here. You can see that I'm just kind of turning my tile and adding that white dot into the darkest part of the blue and having some fun with it. So I hope that you're going to have some fun with these as well as you add in your white. But you can see that, look at those tipple when you add the white. Isn't that so beautiful? It's really fun. Well, here we are. Isn't that so fun? Just looking at these two secondary classes right here and seeing that they make a really fun mosaic here. Look at how pretty that is. I wish I had done 4 of them. Hindsight is 2020. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in our original piece here, and I'm going to put in my chop. And I think I'm going to put my chop right up here in the corner. So I'm just going to add my initials. Your initials are your chop. And so I'm just going to go in and put that in, and that's my way of signifying that I have finished out the piece just by adding my signature there. Now, I hope that you've enjoyed the class here, and I've really enjoyed teaching this to you in so many different ways, and I hope that you'll play with the composition. You know, for me, composition is the name of the game when I'm doing Zentangle. I love a good string, and I really feel like the string really lent itself to a lot of fun, and I hope you feel like it did too. All right, well, I'm Romi Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Thanks for joining us today for the Starlight Zentangle class, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.